So it is officially week 2, and our roster does look a little bit different. So a few trades that went through: Rotom Wash for Palafin, Diggersby for Jolteon, and Skarmory for Garganacl. So a few things that does for our team is it helps with our ground weakness, since Rotom Wash is immune to ground moves, and it consolidates Jolteon as our discharge support for Sceptile, with that ground pivot as well. Diggersby can operate as a spread damage attacker with ground stab that I didn't have previously, and it can also operate as a no guard entrainment fissure user alongside Mega Hawlucha. Lastly, I picked up Skarmory because it was the only Tailwind setter left in tier 4 that had other utility besides just setting Tailwind. So Skarmory obviously has a few good supporting moves. It has Taunt, it has Whirlwind, it has setup with Iron Defense Body Press, it does have Tailwind. I think it's got good synergy with Mega Sceptile, since its only two weaknesses are Fire and Electric, and Sceptile mitigates one of those and has Earth Power to threaten any fire types. But looking ahead to our week 2 matchup, we are playing Thanoscar this week, who has a rain team that is centered around Mega Swampert, Politoed, and Blastoise. My main goals in prep this week were making sure that I had ways to consistently deal with Mega Swampert, making sure that I had consistent ways to get weather control, could prevent my opponent from pivoting in and out super easily, as well as making sure that I had checks for Scarfers. Alright, so first up we have Mega Sceptile. So it's just a 3 attack and protect set this week. A couple notable calcs here are that it can one-shot Mega Swampert even if it's super max bulk with special defense nature. It can pretty consistently one-shot both Politoed and Blastoise after a discharge boost from Rotom. And I have explicitly spec'd Mega Sceptile this week to be able to live one Ice Punch from Mega Swampert after I get an Intimidate down on it, even if it's adamant. Lastly, it is set to outspeed max speed Heliolisk, so it will outspeed pretty much everything except Mega Swampert with Swift Swim Boost in rain. Next up we have Rotom, which this week will be running Choice Scarf. Rotom is pretty much just here this week to buff up Sceptile and get some good spread damage down onto the water types that are going to be facilitating Mega Swampert on his side. And then on the speed side this week, I'm actually pretty invested to make sure that I can outspeed max speed Scarfed Timid Politoed, because I was a little bit afraid of Icy Wind, and so wanted to make sure that I speed crept that so that I could Electro Web it if need be. Next up we have Ninetales, who this week is going to be really pivotal for getting weather control, and also has a very cool interaction with Swampert. So because it has Freeze Dry, and Swampert is a water and ground type, it actually is quadruple effective, because not only is it super effective into water, because it's freeze dry, but it's still super effective into ground because it's still an ice type move. The other notable calc here is that it does one-shot Como, which is also quad weak, and Moonblast should be pretty good in a Chestnut as well. Speed tier wise, we're just below the threshold of max speed Heliolisk because I wanted to go modest this week to make sure that I could one-shot Swampert with freeze dry, and so pretty much outspeeds everything except max Heliolisk and Swift Swim Swampert. Incin, as usual, coming in as our Fake Out and Intimidate support, so a couple notable defensive calcs here. I have spec'd it to live a 32 Adamant Mega Swampert EQ without getting an Intimidate down, and it can actually live a Wave Crash from Mega Swampert in rain after an Intimidate as well. And lastly, it can also live a Close Combat from Emboar if it does get that Intimidate down. So pretty defensive this week, but still enough special defense investment to eat up those water type moves from Blastoise and Politoed, and we have the Posho Berry to help out with the water weakness this week as well. I always got to bring Tinkaton, so this week we're going to the pretty standard set: Fake Out, Gigaton Hammer, Encore Protect. This gives us good stab damage, but it gives us really good utility as well, and we're running Shuka Berry to make sure that we can swap in on Mega Swampert Earthquakes and not just get rolled over. So part of the reason we want to bring Tink is because it's really good to make a Clefable, which could be a problem for my team, and it is a clean one-shot on no bulk with this set. It also has enough special defense investment to live a Weather Ball from max special attack Politoed in rain, and enough HP investment to live an Adamant Mega Swampert Wave Crash in rain as long as it's intimidated. And then last but not least, it is set to just barely outspeed max speed Blastoise and Como, so it's going to still be outsped by things like Heliolisk, but lastly, I gotta bring my boy Mega Gengar, so this week we're going with 2 attacks, Protect and Disable. So Energy Ball obviously can one-shot Mega Swampert, it's quad weak, and then Helping Hand Shadow Ball can actually one-shot Orthworm, which I was a little bit concerned about in prep given how bulky it is. It does need a Helping Hand from Incin to get that calc, but I think in a pinch it can work out. Defensively, it actually is bulky enough this week to live an Earthquake from Mega Swampert if I get the Intimidate down, and speed tier wise, just like Mega Sceptile, it outspeeds everything except Mega Swampert in rain. But yeah, that's my prep for the week, so let's get into game. Alright, so he pretty much brought everything I expected, except he also brought Embor, which I think is a little interesting. No Clefable. I didn't expect it to come just because it's so weak into Gengar, but I do think it makes it a little bit easier to play. No Como is kind of interesting. I think given that he has some physical attackers over there, I'm okay starting with the Rotom Sceptile mode with Incin Ninetales in the back. I don't need Tinkaton as much this game, just because he does have 3 things that resist Gigaton Hammer. So I think this is what we're going to go with first. Alright, so he leads Embor Blastoise, so he does have Fake Out pressure here. So I think what I want to do is I want to Volt Switch without Megaing on Sceptile and Protect. Because if I did Mega first, then Lightning Rod would proc. Makes sense. I think we go to Incin since Embor is the only one that hasn't moved for the turn. So if it is a close combat into the slot, for example, we can get the Intimidate down. It's actually Flare Blitz, so he doubled up onto the Sceptile slot, which I think is pretty interesting. Now here I have a pretty free Energy Ball into this slot. It's totally possible that he didn't even bring Protect on this set. No switches. So we do just get the clean Oko into... Well, not Oko. We do just get the clean kill here into Blastoise. So tempo's looking pretty good. Makes sense. So now I think what I want to do is go for a slow parting shot and Protect. I think he's going to swap to Politoed here and go for Ice Punch onto Sceptile, would be my guess. Because of Pasho, even if he targets Incineroar here, we should be okay. He uses Flip Turn, interesting. So Swampert being off the field, I think is actually beneficial for me. Just because there's nothing threatening Sceptile on this turn, except maybe Scarfed Ice Beam from the Politoed. So I think I actually want to bring a Ninetales here to overwrite the weather and make him forced to bring Politoed out. So I think it's a pretty easy freeze dry into this slot And then swap back in my Incineroar. Actually, I like the Rotom switch here. I think I want to preserve Intimidate for when Swampert's locked onto the field. It is going to be Ice Beam, so it's not Scarfed, so we do confirm that. And then we do have Sash here, so as long as it doesn't burn, we should be fine. And now he kind of has a decision to make. I think Protect Politoed, launch an attack on Emboar makes the most sense, but it's also not very easy because I could have Hydro Pump here. But he needs to get Politoed out, exactly, and so now Swampert's coming in into a Freeze Ride that it's quad weak to. But he does have Sucker Punch on the Emboar, which is interesting, so... And I think what I can actually do here is I can go back into Rotom and look for a Willow. The issue is that if Incin dies... So I actually think I just Volt Switch on the Emboar slot again. And then fake out the Swampert. So Emboar does have Protect, so we do confirm that. So I'm gonna get the Volt Switch off here no matter what. I think the question is, what do I do with my Incin? I don't think I live a Parting Shot, but this might be an instance where he's afraid to bring Politoed in on the Emboar slot, or he ignores Incineroar attempting to kill the Rotom, so... So I did EV to live at -1, so that's a good play by me. And I do get the Parting Shot to get Rotom back in on the field now. So here's where it's a little bit tough, because he can swap in Politoed and go for another Ice Punch or EQ. And I don't necessarily want to be stuck into Will-O-Wisp here, so I think I actually have to go for a Discharge. This is going to be flip turn. So as long as I don't kill my own Incineroar here, this is actually a pretty okay play. And it is Wakanberry on Politoed. It might be low enough to where it kills anyway. It doesn't. And I paralyze my own Incineroar, which is not ideal. But I do get the para on Politoed, so... And I get the para on Emboar. Crazy. So I do know that my Incineroar is faster than the Emboar. Another discharge will kill the Politoed. And so I think what I actually want to do is Parting Shot out on the Emboar slot. No, I actually need to Throat Chop the Emboar slot. And then discharge. He does have Sucker Punch on the Emboar as well, though, so I do have to keep that in mind. Yeah, I think given that, I actually do fake out discharge again. Because I think Sucker Punch was coming here. Yeah, it flinched first, which means that it was. And I'm not sure if that would have killed me or not. This endgame isn't necessarily the easiest, just because Rotom doesn't have anything to hit the Swampert. I think I want to try to slow Parting Shot, but that's relatively predictable here. I think I have to just let Rotom die. So maybe I needed to swap in Sceptile last turn, and then I think it was fine, actually. So how many turns of Rain are left? There's 2. So it's actually not totally over here. But with that being said, it does come down to a double protect, so... I do think I needed to swap Incin back in on that turn. And just hope that I live the... So, just depends on if I get another Detect off here. I do, so I actually win the game, thank God. Alright. Not too bad. I do think I made a bit of a blunder there in the end game, not being able to get Fake Out on this last turn here, and he obviously did make a decent read, but this is going to be the game, and so not too bad. I also think part of the problem I had this game is that I couldn't get Sceptile safely back in once I had it at low HP. And so I think something for next game, if I'm going to go back to the Sceptile mode, is that I definitely need to keep Sceptile on the field when it's healthy, and to make sure that I'm supporting it rather than it being supportive of other things. So I think Ninetales was really good. I think the Sucker Punch caught me a little bit off guard, but I still don't think it was that bad. I think given how that one started, trying to think, because I did have to pivot on the fake out turn, and so it's not necessarily the easiest. Tinkaton does have a stronger fake out, but the issue is that it just doesn't deal any damage against this team. The Emboar is also slightly problematic for Tinkaton because I do have Shuka Berry. I think I like Rotom Ninetales this game, actually. Can trade fake outs turn 1, which isn't too bad. I think I need to keep Sceptile safe on field. I think part of the problem last game is just that I couldn't safely get it back in. And so this game, I think I really want to keep it on the field and make sure that I'm pivoting its partner rather than pivoting it. So here's the Chestnut. So I think if he's going to fake out anything, it's going to be my Sceptile, and I think I'm willing to take the fake out trade. I don't think there's necessarily an issue here. If he fakes out my Incineroar, then I get a free Energy Ball. And I think he led Chestnut expecting... Yep, okay. And so I trade here. This could be a Rindo Berry, but it's not. And that is Sash or just luck? Okay, it's Sashed. And this is going to be Iron Defense on the Chestnut, so that's interesting. So I'm kind of curious what... a +2 defense body press does to Sceptile. It does a lot, but not that much. I think I like... Detect, switch into Rotom. So relatively straightforward there. He could wide guard here, but I feel like it's kind of free damage. It looks like... It looks like Dragon Pulse can potentially KO at +1 depending on the bulk on this set. So I think I just want to rip the Discharge. I get to +1. I knock out the Blastoise and do good chip to Chestnut. And depending on how this is trained, this could just be a clean KO. And we got the pair as well, so... So, good damage. Body press shouldn't kill me, depending on how this is trained, but... Alright, and we live, like, relatively comfortably. So here he either has to bring in Swampert, which means if he brings in Politoed on his alternate slot, he's going to forfeit his Iron Defense boost, which I think he's okay with. Or... yeah, so I'm at +1. I think, like I said last game, I really just want to preserve Sceptile. And so I think this turn, I just want to go to Ensign. I want to get the Intimidate down, and if he ends up going for flip turn here, I think that's okay, because I get Fake Out Pressure next turn. The only thing threatening Sceptile here is going to be Swampert in the rain. So he does go for the flip turn onto the Ensign. Kind of expected that. So we live that pretty comfortably. The question is, does he hard read this and also body press into the Ensign? Because that could be a little problematic for me. Or does he body press into the Sceptile as well? So he body pressed into the Ensign, which does get a clean KO. But I think the nice thing here is that assuming we've confirmed that it's Walkenberry on Politoed, not Scarf, and so it is very free for me to bring Rotom back in and just go for another discharge. I think Mega Sceptile has done all that I've needed it to in this game. I think I just want to KO the Politoed and then discharge again. Because then I can lock Swampert on the field without rain. And he has to pick which target he kills here. And obviously he can go for the Sceptile, which is obvious. But now I can't overwrite the weather, and Ninetales Freeze Dry should be able to clean up this game. So I think an easy play here for me is just Protect Discharge to scout for an opposing Protect. So he actually went for the Wave Crash and Body Press, and so he's doubling up onto the Ninetales here. I think this turn does get a little bit problematic for me, because if he does have... No, so we've confirmed he has Wave Crash, Earthquake, Ice Punch, Flip Turn, so there is no Protect here. So I think I should be okay. The only way that we're not okay is if I paralyze myself, which I think I've gotten a para on every single discharge that I've cast this game. So, nice clean KO on the Swampert. And then whichever Mon that Chestnut chooses to kill with Body Press here should die to the other the next turn. So Overall, not the cleanest set on my part. Obviously, I think Scarfed Rotom did put me in a couple awkward positions there where I had to discharge myself or risk other things. I think that first end game, I think the flip turn multiple times caught me off guard, blowing the Pacho Berry on my Swampert, which is something I thought about in prep, but it's just not something that I thought would come into play in practice. And then also, I think that the supporting Pokemon of the Sucker Punch on the Emboar, and then my Sceptile's inability to one-shot Chestnut after a +1, I think it barely lived, but still. This was a pretty close set, and so hats off to Thanos Car. So, going to do post-game reflections a little bit differently this week. I think for the most part, my prep was really good outside of probably my Rotom set needed Hydro Pump on it to be able to deal with Swampert late game. But focusing on the gameplay, I think that I made a few blunders that stood out really obviously to me when watching the footage back. So I think on this play in particular, I had a Pokemon die and I got a Volt Switch, meaning that I was able to pick whatever board state I wanted. And instead of picking the board state that I had prepped for, which is Sceptile in against Mega Swampert, where I'm able to get Intimidate down, because I know that I can live that Ice Punch, and I have Fake Out Pressure active for the other slot, so I'm not subject to a double up. Instead of choosing that, I end up going with the passive route here and putting in Rotom and Incin, since they can't take much damage, but I end up losing the tempo control that I have. Swampert being on the field with Intimidate, Fake Out, and no weather control right now, I would have been in the driver's seat had Sceptile gone in here. And so I definitely think that that's a blunder. And I think that I could have won this game very cleanly had this been Incineroar Sceptile, Fake Out the Emboar, Energy Ball the Swampert. Worst case scenario, he swaps in Politoed into the Emboar slot. I eat the Ice Punch that I know that I can eat, and I get the Energy Ball back into the Swampert for the KO. But something to keep in mind, I played a little passively and it almost bit me. But anyways, thank you for watching. See you next week.